What's up, everyone? True Techno Gamer back here down in the basement in the lab, and appreciate all the support. You guys have been great with the comments and checking out my latest videos. So keep that up. Please like, subscribe if you haven't. Hit me up in the comments. Let's keep this going. So I'm sure you guys, most of you guys probably watching this know I've had some recent developments down here in the home theater. Some nice upgrades. Finally got some room treatments done. And then, of course, I got these bad boys. This is the Pearl Listen D215S flagship subwoofer. I have two of them. The other one is over there. And it's been a few weeks now, so you guys are probably wondering, I kind of went radio silent for a while. And there are reasons for that. Again, this isn't my main thing. I have a full-time job. Got two young kids and family duties, and I also got sick like a lot of people in the last couple of weeks. So a lot going on. But I wanted to give you guys some key updates here. Now, I had a little bit more time to kind of mess around with things, and basically, what happened is once I got the two subwoofers installed and I reran my arc, I kind of got stuck. I was just basically having, I'll say, some issues with arc. I mean, it was just a matter of really fine-tuning things with arc to just get the best possible sound. Now, in the process of that, I learned a lot about arc. I realized that I really haven't been doing my calibrations correctly this whole time. Going back for, I had the Anthem now for 3 years. So pretty much that whole time, even with the SVS subs that I previously had, I don't think I really did them justice or really got the best of them with some of the things that I learned. So there's a lot of Anthem people I know out there that have, they use Anthem Arc, Genesis. So I'm going to share my learning because some of the stuff that I found are kind of buried in various videos, but I really thought it was important to share some of these details that ultimately, got me in trouble, right? Needless to say, it's tricky for me because there were two variables going on. The room treatments were one variable, and then the subwoofers were another variable. I did the room treatments first, but I waited to integrate the sub before I reran arc, because I'm like, I know I'm gonna have to rerun it again once I get the sub, so I figured I'll just do both in one go. And needless to say, when I first did that, my initial impression was like not great, right? Not great at all. And I don't think it, was the subs, per se, but it just wasn't sounding right. Now, here's the thing. You guys might have seen my short, where I kind of gave like this quick initial impression when I was listening to some music after I put in the room treatment. Guys, in short, I was blown away. And I hadn't had a whole lot of time to do heavy listening. And then about a week later, that next weekend or so, I actually had some friends over who had not really heard my system. And I was like, hey, let's just listen to some music, And it was my first time really sitting down listening to stuff as well, post the room treatments. And guys, it was magical. It's the best way I could describe it. I'm listening to it with them. And I'm telling them, like, I know you guys are probably thinking like I'm doing this, I'm crazy, like this is my system. I have not heard my system sound like this before. It was just sublime. It was the hi-fi dream realized. Okay, that's the best way to say it. 25 years for me of chasing this magic, this super, you are there, the performer is right in front of you, the speakers disappear, the just resolution, the detail of what, hi-fi, speakers like these Paradigm Personas should be able to do. I felt like I had never listened to my speakers before, that I've never listened to my system before. It was like really like that, man. I couldn't explain it. I kept saying like, it can't be just the room treatments. I didn't do anything else, but it was crazy, right? Now, that's important to say because that now set my reference point for what was possible in my system, right? So that was like, oh, okay, that's where we're at, right? That's what we're doing. So my expectation was, okay, I'll get the subs in, I'll recalibrate with arc, I'm gonna get that sound, but just now with these subwoofers doing their thing, kind of, right? And that didn't happen, right? When I reran ARC, that magic wasn't there. In fact, that first time I reran ARC, the sound sounded bad. I mean, it was the subwoofer sounded bad. You know, there was a huge gap. Like I can hear like a huge gap in the frequency, like in the lower mid range, upper bass was just not there. You know, I was just like, whoa, right? So that kind of got, and then again, now my reference is like this, right? And I'm like, okay, what I'm hearing is nowhere near that. So what's going on, right? And then that kind of got me down the path to really explore, because I'm like, the only thing I did was rerun ARC, right? I mean, it was sounding like that before. Well, I got the subs, I turned them, I plugged them in, and I reran ARC, right? So could the sub be messing up the rest of the speakers? What is ARC doing? And, you know, so I went down that rabbit hole and been kind of going down there for the last couple of weeks, guys, right? So as I sit here now, I would say that I learned a lot. I think I got a lot more out of ARC to optimize the system as a whole. I would say that I'm probably about maybe 85 to 90% back to that magic, right? The system still sounds much better with the room treatments than it did prior to me putting the room treatments in. So whatever that standard was that I've been used to now for the last few years, it's still quite a bit above that in terms of the vocal clarity and just the mid-range and resolution. And yeah, it's still there, but and maybe now it's been a couple weeks, so I'm thinking like, I don't know, maybe my audio memory is betraying me in a way. Maybe because it was so new then, and now I've been kind of used to this sound for the last, you know, like week or two, that I'm just kind of getting used to it, so it's not hitting the same. You know, and I know some of you guys know what I'm dealing with here, what I'm talking about, so I don't know what it is. I have run ARC about at least 9 or 10 times in the past like week and a half, right? Or maybe 2 weeks, I guess. I rerun it, and just kept trying to tweak things, kept trying to optimize things, and I kind of feel like at this point, there's not much more I can do with ARC. Now, I mean, just in terms of running it and how I'm measuring. Now, within ARC, it's super powerful in terms of things that I can do post running it to like adjust the curves, and I've been playing with some of that. But in general, you shouldn't have to do that, right? And, you know, I'll get into that more later. But needless to say, I'm mostly there. My system still sounds really good. And, you know, I need to sit with it for some more. I need to listen to some content some more. And I may try some other things in ARC, but, you know, this may be where I'm at, right? So before I really talk about the subs, I'm going to do that in another video, so stay tuned for that. I'm going to talk more details about my initial impressions on the sub. But for this video, for now, I'm going to go handheld. And I kind of just want to show you guys my listening space, and I'm going to show the ARC mic. I'm not running it live for you guys here, but I need to show you that because most of the details that I learned have to do with how I'm running ARC, how I'm positioning the mic, and stuff like that, right? I think it's super enlightening, so let's go to that. Alrighty, so let me walk you guys through the key things that I noticed. I don't have our Anthem ARC in front of me, but I needed to have the mic out to just show you guys, okay? So there was three key things, really 4 key things that I learned to make my ARC calibration better. The first is kind of what you're looking at, right? Now, in general, even if you run ARC and look at it in the computer when you're running it, it always says to use ear level, right, when you are taking your measurements. The default is 5 positions, okay? And, you know, that's about it. And as I kind of researched, I realized that there's some details in here that really matter, okay? So the first thing that I kind of just noticed is all the time I run ARC, and you know, the first position is your kind of main position, I would kind of have it looking something like this, right? And you can look at it from the side here to see about the height that it is, okay? Because the idea is that when I'm sitting in these chairs, that's about where my ears are, right? I took it literally. The problem is, and some of you guys probably already know this, I have theater chairs with big backs. So when the ARC is running and doing a full calibration of my room and trying to get those side and rear speakers back there, guess what? There is some obstruction by the chairs here, right? The microphone, literally, is below the height of the chair, so it's not going to get a straight signal from those, especially from the rears back there, okay? But in general, the Anthem also says that you really shouldn't have the microphone too close to any boundary, right? So right now it's like really close to that chair boundary. Just not ideal, all right? So they really say that, you know, you want to make sure that the mic has a clear line. And kind of what I did was, I'm not going to do it all here, but I just kind of rose, you know, pulled this up along the stand here and got it to, you know, it's in my general position of where I would sit in the middle, but I kind of put it higher to make sure that it had a clear line of sight, right, to all of the speakers, right? And that actually made a difference, okay? It seems obvious, but again, if you take it literally, you know, I was putting it where, and I did this before in the past with Odyssey as well when I had my Marantz. I put it where my ear is, right? And I, you know, once I got these theater chairs, that makes sense if you're sitting in a, you know, like a chair like that, right? Or most couches, right, don't have too high of a back. But, you know, with theater chairs, that's something that you got to kind of account for, okay? So that was the first thing, made a difference. The second thing was, historically, when I was running room calibration, like in this room, in this setup, I kind of looked at it as two ways. I kind of looked at it as one, my front row, which are basically where my theater chairs are here. And two would be the second row, which is where the bar area is here. Now, when they say 5 positions, I looked at it like, okay, well, let me basically kind of capture all 5 seats here, right? So I would kind of have this being position 1, my main position. Position 2, I kind of would put like here. So when someone's sitting here, position 3 was kind of like here. Position 4, right? You kind of get it. I'll put it over here and do the same thing. Mind you, again, same height. So same issue with the back of the chair across all of them. And then position 5 would be there. Now, when you really look up and look at the details, and a lot of people that have run Anthem Arc and kind of read all the documentation, Anthem specifically says that A, you shouldn't have a mic position that's more than about 2 feet away from the main listening position, okay? So if my main listening position was like about here, right, a little higher, well, this is definitely more than 2 feet away. Not to mention the fact, again, that I didn't really change the height. You know, and this area here was more than 2 feet away, right? So, you know, and then also in some cases, I had put the mic and, you know, said, okay, let me get the back row too to get a wider field, right? And I would put the mic like here, which again is definitely more than 2 feet away, right? So that's not the way you want to go. You know, Anthem recommends that, again, you keep the mic, within about 2 feet away from the main listening position, which is here, and kind of use the mic stand to just kind of swivel it around. Because the mic stand actually turns out to be, you know, roughly 2 feet, or I think it's a little smaller, but almost 2 feet, right? So kind of swing the mic around and, you know, you're going to just kind of get a feel, in this case, within these 2 seats. It's kind of where it is. And that's kind of how it's recommended to run, right? So I adjusted that and stopped, you know, kind of putting the mic where I sit and just thinking like, oh, because, yeah, in the past I had done one here. I had put it over the floor, you know, so that's not really the way to do it. The third thing, which is kind of related to this, is that Anthem also recommends, and some of you guys I'm sure know this, is when you change positions for your mic, you want to have different heights so that Anthem can get a better sense of your room. So you don't want to move it, whether, you know, however you do it, you don't want to necessarily do it at the same height. So it shouldn't be like here and then here and then here, kind of how I was doing it. Some people do it different ways. Some people do it in like a kind of like a star kind of shaped. And that's kind of how I did it. So basically I did like position 1 here, and then I would kind of turn it and then lower it way down and kind of get the corner of this chair like here, right? That's not right. I'm not doing it, you know, like, again, fully, guys, for you guys here, but, you know, I would lower it on the pedestal here, get it down, right? Straighten it, make sure it's facing, you know, I did do that. The dot is meant to be facing forward because it's a directional mic. I did capture that, right? But kind of do it something like that.
right? And then position 3, I would just kind of move it and swivel it and kind of do that on this side. I will move that table, by the way, with the remotes there, but kind of do it down there. And then position 4, I would kind of do, so I'm doing like this, and this is something recommended, like here, down, down, and then up, right? So that's kind of like that star position, but there's different levels of height and verticality, in it, right? So position 4 would be like kind of like up here, and position 5 would kind of be like over and up here, right? So that's what they recommend. So I started doing that as the third thing. So I was rerunning. I kept tweaking and changing these things, and they did make a difference and kind of get me closer to that magic, okay? And I set with that. So I did those 3 things, and then I kind of got what I felt was pretty good results. It still wasn't quite there. And I set with that for like a week and a half or so. And then I was thinking like, well, what else can I do? Like, what else may be, going on here? And there was one other detail that I guess had incorrect. So in Anthem, when you run Anthem Arc, one of the first things that it asks you to do, okay, is to manually put in a measurement from this main listening position, right? Should be turned, of course, we know, but from this main listening position, right? Again, I had mine's higher, right? That's not exactly where I had it, but, main listening position here to the front left speaker, okay? So the front left speaker in my case is here, right? So you're supposed to take a tape measure, like you see there, and measure from basically the front of that speaker around where the tweeter is to where your main listening position is. All of the measurements from ARC, right, are kind of based on that measurement, especially in terms of the timings and like the delays and all that kind of stuff that ARC calculates. So when I was running this for the last couple of weeks, I don't know when I put it in and how long it was there or where it came from exactly, but when I run my ARC software, it had a default, and not, it's not the default, but I guess, again, at some point I put it in there, but it had a default of 12 feet, like 12 and a half feet. And again, I don't know where that came from. Now, over the last few years, I did change a bunch. I moved my seats up a bit. When I got the seats, I got the TV and all of this stuff. I did change a bunch. So that was probably old. And it turns out that with a tape measure, the distance from there to the front of that speaker is actually about 9.5 feet. So that's a difference of 3 feet, right? So all of the distances were basically off, right? Once I did that. And I've been running, I did it like 7, 8 times like that. So finally, I realized that, and I said, okay, well, let me rerun it one more time, do all of the practices I did, different heights, the star shaped and the seats, all of that stuff. Make sure that there's no obstruction to the mic, that it's above the heights of the chair back here. And then finally put in that 9.5 feet there. And I noticed that the calculations for the distances were actually a lot more accurate across, because the way ARC works is that it measures the relative distance based on that front left speaker, right? So every other speaker is kind of dictated from there, right? And the distances were a lot more accurate, which also benefits the timings with everything. Now, granted, I have, these room treatments in here now, so they're going to affect the timings, but with that incorrect distance, right, I just can tell that something still was off and the clarity wasn't quite there. And that perception of the clarity absolutely could be influenced by a 3-foot difference in the timings of, how ARC is calculating that, right? Something that small can make a pretty big difference. And it absolutely did. So when I did that, I noticed that I did get a bit more of that clarity back. Again, that's how it should have been anyway. So, so those 4 things really over the last couple of weeks definitely allowed me to get a much better integration with the bass. Oh, sorry. There's another thing I forgot. There's another thing I almost forgot. So there's, I guess, 5 things. The 5th thing is that my sub levels initially were way too high. So when I first got the Pro Listen subs, I don't know why, but I had them, they basically were set and kind of calibrated, based on like the manual settings, where from my main listening position, each one was measuring about 77 dB, right? Where 75 is generally considered reference, right? Well, that turns out, and now Anthem didn't complain about it. That's the thing. They didn't complain at all. But it turns out that that's really a lot higher than what you would want. With dual subs, what you want, I mean, your goal is to try to get it to 75, right? But with dual subs, because they kind of both operate at the same time and they give you a bit more input, they recommend to reduce it by 3 dB for every extra sub you have. So 75 is the target, but with 2 subs, you should get 72. And with 3 subs, you would get 69. And with 4 subs, you would get 66, et cetera, right? So I should have been looking closer to something like 72. And in fact, I actually saw online somewhere where they actually said with dual subs, you probably want it closer to 71. So I was at 77, right? Point whatever. So that's a difference of about 6 dB, right? So that's going to make a pretty big difference. So I also did that, and I went in and used the Arc Quick Measure to just, and then use the PearlListen app, of course, to modify the volume levels so that when I did the Quick Measure before running Arc, I basically saw it at 71. I used 71. All right, and then Arc does this thing, and you'd be surprised at how much of a difference that makes. The sub levels, especially for how the sub integrates and how the balance of the sound is, it made a huge difference. That 77, again, when I ran Arc that first time, all of those 5 things I just mentioned was not done at all, right? And I ran Arc the way I had been running it, right? And it sounded bad. I mean, it just sounded off. Knowing, again, what my system was capable of with that magic, especially now with that new reference, I was just like, whoa, it really worried me. I'm like, what happened, right? So after doing those 5 things and rerunning, like I said, I would say I'm probably about 85 to 90% back, and again, some of that I may be more, it may be, again, weeks of audio memory and weeks of listening at this level already with the room treatments that I just maybe don't remember or just have a different perception. I'm acknowledging that. I can't say for sure. But in my mind, I would say that I'm mostly there, but there still is something about the sound that is not quite grabbing me the way it did. That magic was there when I just first listened after putting up the room treatments, right? And I'll go into more of that when I talk in another video. But needless to say, these things really helped a lot. So if you're running Anthem, and I'm sure a lot of these practices apply to Dirac and Odyssey as well. And and now in hindsight, it seems really simple and intuitive, right? But I would, again, just be careful, kind of use that common sense. Make sure your mic is not obstructed. Make sure you follow the directions. You don't really want to have your mic spread out too far in your room. I think that's a general thing. The farther spread out, the harder it is to kind of get a nice consolidated, measurement for your space. You don't need it. You just don't, right? So yeah, just be mindful of that. Make sure your subs are not too low, not too high, right? That kind of the general rule of thumb. Your target is 75. Multiple subs, you need to reduce the volume of each sub to compensate. And that made a huge difference. So that particular piece, the integration of the subs with the system was way better once I did that. And it just sounded way more balanced. The bass sounded way more full without me even have to adjust anything. I didn't have to increase room gain or deep bass or anything like that, which is rare. That never happened before. Previously, whenever I ran Arc with the SVS sub, I always had to add quite a bit of room gain and quite a bit of deep bass in order to get what I felt was adequate bass, right? And that's a common thing. I know a lot of you guys are using Anthem Arc. It's kind of almost like a thing. Run Arc and then add 3 to 6 dB of bass depending on your taste, right? It turns out, man, once I did these things, I didn't have to add any bass. Now that's partly a testament to the subs too, but again, I'll talk more about that, but it really helps. So take heed, don't follow my mistakes, and happy tuning. So thanks again, guys. Appreciate you. I'll talk to you guys in the next one.